Our story begins with the coterie scared, waking in the back of a truck, moving at great speed down the roads of Gary. With them is a fourth creature, a hideous, warped human. As they start to get to their senses, their world is rocked again as gunfire opens on the truck. It crashes, careening into the side of the road, and after a lot of commotion, the group manages to free themselves from their shackles and escape under fire from their assailants. Running into a nearby outlet for an old sewer tunnel, they escape their assailants only to be found by a hideous ball of hair and teeth that calls herself Whispers. She informs them that they are actually vampires, and she will take them to a sheriff who will decide their fate, as she suspects them of belonging to another faction within the vampire political scheme. The group meets Hoyt, the sheriff of Gary, who is not very talkative, but he, in turn, takes them to Theodore Royce, the prince of Gary, who lives in a large mansion on the outskirts of town. There, they are introduced to the Camarilla, the main faction operating in the decaying city. Royce wants their help to rebuild and to make the city a greater place for kindred to live, and asks them to go back to the scene of the ambush. He wants to see if they can find anything about the fourth member of the group, as someone like that on the loose could be a major issue for vampires staying hidden within human society, which is something the Camarilla calls the Masquerade. The group does go back, only to find that the truck they were inside had ties to a company called Chiron, as well as expensive Belgian weapons in the trunk of one of the accompanying cars. The creature was nowhere to be found, and as such, they go back to Royce empty-handed. The group is invited to a gathering of the city's kindred at the estate of Theodore Royce. The kindred are introduced here to the Tremere, a clan of vampire mages. Royce had called the Tremere to the gathering, Meriadamu, to help discover more about the young Cainites, only to find that their blood seems potent. This can be both a boon and a curse in such a fragile city, as it makes them targets for other vampires. The gathering is interrupted by the introduction of Torrance, a man with piercing emerald eyes that arrives at the gathering to get his people back. It is clear he belongs to an enemy faction to the Camarilla, called the Sabbat, and he threatens that he will burn the city to the ground if Royce does not unleash his captives. The night ends in a brawl as Hoyt charges Torrance after continuing threats, slashing at him, only for Torrance's visage to shift into that of a woman, screaming with blood gushing out of her now opened throat. As the group deals with the aftermath of this threat, the night ends. The group decides to investigate an old empty hotel called the Genesis Towers. This luxury hotel was slated to be opened recently, but for some reason has not, intriguing the young fledglings. Investigating the tower, they feel an uneasy presence with them, and as they turn on the power to the building, they hear the sound of an elevator slowly descending from the higher floors, with a note inside inviting them to come to a certain floor. There, they meet Reza, the sire of one of the Cainites. Informs her that she is, like him, a Ravnos, and that Catherine, another of the three, is a Semishi. He also tells Isaac, the last of the three, that he is a Lasombra. As the group gets enough of Reza's easygoing and uninterested demeanor, they try to leave the building, only to see that the police have been called. And as two of them escape, Isaac is grabbed and taken into custody, only to later escape with the help of his contacts. The group meet up to discuss the previous excursion and talk about the fact that someone has been following them around on a nightly basis. They then receive a call from the prince asking them to check out a makeshift club in a warehouse in the industrial district of Gary. Going there, the group clearly sees that there are armed men in and outside the building, as well as people on all manner of drugs at the location. Trying to learn more about who is in charge, they eventually meet up with Escam, a man with black eyes and a terrible temper. As he learns they are Camarilla, he starts taunting the group, attacking them, starting a fight which the group cleverly gets themselves out of, alive, although the same cannot be said for most of the assailants. Escam, his face blown open by a deft shot, escapes into the night as the warehouse goes up in flame. After making themselves a new exit, the group gets away just as police and fire department arrives on scene. The group is asked to police the northwestern part of Gary, in return getting a small piece of it as domain, territory which other vampires must respect as theirs. The prince wants to turn the city into an equivalent of Atlantic City in Indiana, and to do this he must first rid the city of industry. This night, however, the group are asked to go meet with a new arrival at the airport. This man, called Morell, is then taken with the coterie back to downtown to a building of his choice. But the coterie is intercepted by a group of assailants with Molotov cocktails and guns in a drive-by. Escaping the situation deftly, they learn that Morell is a Tremere, and that he will stay in the city for the foreseeable future. After following up on clues about the vehicle that ambushed them previously in the drive-by, the coterie check out a bar called O'Donnell's. The reason being was that the car that was used was spotted in the back lot after the attack. Going there, the group meets with the car's owner, a man called Rodrigo, who is forced by the coterie to go on a ride to explain why he was attacking them. The coterie is however surprised to hear that the car was in lockup at the police station until just recently, being released back to him in its current damaged state. As the coterie plans to investigate further, they release Rodrigo and ask him to help who framed him, which he agrees with. The night then comes to an end. The group visits Royce, telling him about the fact that the police seems to be involved somehow with the men that attacked them and that have been following them. Royce tells them to investigate this further, but as he has before, urges them not to do anything which would badly reflect on the department as a whole. Royce needs the police to change the city in the way he wishes. After leaving the prince's estate, the group goes to follow up on an investigation of Isaac's. He was looking into an old, pristine mansion in the northwestern part of town, inside the coterie's domain. As the coterie investigated, it is clear that there is something very off about the mansion. It is almost free of dust and entirely free of damage. After repeated interactions with a spirit that seems to want them gone, the coterie leaves, ruffled, Julianne swearing never to come back. The group meets up for a gathering of the city's kindred in one of the nicer locations in the city, Marquette Park Pavilion. Here they talk and mingle with the other kindred and their servants, and they notice that the prince seems to be talking with someone they have not met before. As the night goes on, the man seems to be just about to leave, but he stops with the coterie, telling them that he looks forward to meeting them at the castle. Hurriedly, the prince comes over to their table as the man leaves, explaining that he has chosen the coterie to meet with an old reclusive vampire at his domain in Eastern Europe. The vampire wants to move away from his old domain, it is said, and Royce wants him and Gary to help defend against the continued attacks of enemy factions. But he cannot spare any of the older kindred, as that might leave their defenses too weak. As such, he tells the group that in 2 weeks' time, they will depart for the domain of the Duke. The coterie receives an urgent message from the prince, telling them to attack the concrete plant, a central base for the Sabbat operations in Gary. They hurriedly do so, and using explosives given to them by the prince, they prepare to infiltrate the plant, until things go awry. Catherine is questioned at the gate, and failing to bullshit her way past them, or to get her to leave, the men attack, which turns into an extended gunfight. As the scuffle unfolds, horrid Semishi creations are unleashed one after another from the plant, culminating in a monstrous creation known as a Vosht, the size of a car, which nearly destroys the coterie. After a combination of multiple shotgun shells, a rammed car, and vampiric powers, the creature finally keels over and dies, and the group blows up the concrete plant, along with all the horror they found inside. What comes next? Well, wait and see.